Good evening, everybody. Good evening, good evening, good evening. I'm so grateful that everyone has arrived and everyone has come in. Please note that we are recording it as we speak. So if you don't want to be part of the recording, please will you leave right now. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much for being with us. Normally how I start is I read my belief systems and then we can jump into it. So number one, I firmly believe that health is more than what you eat and drink, whether you exercise or whether you avoid certain food items. I firmly believe that health is diverse, dynamic, and deliberate. I firmly believe that health is not possible under the hand of only one practitioner or one discipline of medicine or healthcare. I firmly believe that health is a person's primary responsibility and must be person-specific. I firmly believe that health must be conversed on physical, chemical, emotional, mental, spiritual, cultural, racial, and perhaps permaculture. I firmly believe that there must be a better way than our current status quo. So with all of that being said, I'm sure some people are going to say, why have you got Mark on talking about permaculture? So Mark, let's first dive in. What is permaculture? And how does it apply to, someone like me?
All right, super. Thank you most kindly, Dr. Travis, for having me on your podcast today. It's such a blessing being here, just as it was a blessing to be at your open day. And thank you to everyone that joined us today. And yes, I'll be talking about permaculture. So permaculture is basically a designed system using the patterns of nature, right, to create a natural sustainable means of creating water systems, food forests, eco building. It's just a wide spectrum of how you can live naturally and how you can harness the power of nature, the power that God created for all of us to actually have a natural lifestyle and eat great food.
So with that being said, how would you say that relates to health? I mean, I can see how it relates to health, but how would you say that that relates to health?
So permaculture, as I said, it's like a lifestyle. So how it would relate to health is that it would really, living in the times that we live right now, it's that a lot of the food is being compromised, a lot of the air is being compromised, the water we're drinking is compromised. So permaculture is basically taking us back to where we started, back to where our forefathers, our grandfathers used to live, where everything is harnessed from nature and taking care of nature. Like permaculture itself have three core value systems. And the first one is care for the earth. Second one is care for people. Third one is share surplus. So caring for the earth means that you're nurturing the earth that you're living in, taking care of the soil being the start of everything. So making sure that your soil is not being sprayed with Roundup or being tampered with. And there's, as soon as it's like before, one of the guys, Bill Mollison said, like before, how they would sell farms, it would be based on how many earthworms are on the ground, so that that is healthy soil. So if there's no earthworms in your ground and like you're living in unhealthy soil, you're not going to get healthy food. So taking care of your soil and taking care of the earth, stopping pollution, fighting against people that are polluting the world, and that's what it's all about. It starts there. Taking care of people. Taking care of people is also vital because people form part of the earth, and people are like, we live together, and like looking at how we are separated based on like pandemics or whatever, or culture, race, whatever it may be, that is also a disservice to the ultimate way of living, because we are all joined together, and living together. It means like in a permaculture concept is like also taking care of people and not creating too much work for creating a system that allows people to rest, and
well, I mean, I always bring ourselves back to the World Health Organization and the defined health as an optimal state of physical, emotional, which most people understand, and then social well-being. And when people listen to this definition, they're like, why is the social well-being in place? And what you've just mentioned now, Mark, is just 100% of what social well-being is about. And then if we look at it from a climate change point of view, the conversation is, we're all concerned that we're going to destroy the earth. The answer is we're not going to destroy the earth, but the earth might not be inhabitable by humans, which means that the foundation of what it is to being healthy, it's taking care of Mother Earth that we live on.
Exactly. Definitely. And that's basically the principles of permaculture, going back, living with the earth and not against it, using the energies and the patterns of nature to actually live good, healthy lives.
So when you're talking about the energy and patterns of nature, I can imagine that for everyone on the call, they're going to go, okay, how does that apply to me? I mean, so we live in Joburg. My office is in Northcliffe. My house is in Walkerville. When you talk about living to the patterns of nature, give us some practical understanding. How do the people on the call today, understand that and then start to work into that?
Cool. And I really love the way that you frame that question, where you say living in Joburg, living in Northcliffe, and it's really basically about that. It's about understanding and observing where you are, and understanding really like your environment and using your environment. Like one of the first steps of permaculture is observing and interacting. And what that means is going outside and viewing a piece of land that you have, like seeing where the sun is. That's part of the energies of nature, where the sun is coming from, where does it go down, what part is receiving more sun. When it rains, where's the water channeling to, how you can catch that water, how you can save that energy, how you can harness from like the soil that you have, what soil do you have based on where you are. And like if you're talking about Joburg, that Joburg during the winter, it goes totally desert, and it's about planning accordingly to that. How can you actually use that to your advantage, or maybe looking at the rains that we're having right now, how can you use that rains to your advantage? And that is basically looking at the patterns, living and harnessing from the patterns of nature. And that's how you basically start the process of permaculture, by just observing and interacting with the space that you have. It doesn't really have to be a farm. It doesn't really have to be like a big garden. You could really be on your balcony, understanding what you have, what can you plant there, what plants could work, what plants do you already have on your land, and how you could use them to benefit you.
I mean, there's so much there we can dive into. I remember listening to a podcast about a gentleman in Mumbai, Bombay in India, and he was talking about the pollution there and how he found a wonderful combination of different internal plants that was actually really air conditioning the air inside his apartment. And as soon as he started to do that, what a difference to his breathing and so on forth. And I mean, certainly in Joburg, we live in a fairly polluted city. I mean, I know a lot of people don't necessarily, take note of it, but I would acknowledge that there is pollution. What can someone do straight away to start, when you say benefiting themselves, how can they start to use their environment to help purify the air?
Definitely. So to dive into the word pollution itself it's basically a result of work. And when I say result of work, if you're looking at it in the system, it's basically it's basically a part of a system that has not been paid attention to. Therefore, there is now pollution. And if I can explain this more in a permaculture context, I think I said this on the open day, is that if you build a chicken pen, all right, without a water tank, that means you're going to have to work and carry a bucket of water to the chicken pen, pour it out there, and then that's going to be a physical work for you, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But part of a permaculture system, it is a lack of a system. It is a lack of planning. But then again, if you don't go to the chicken pen and go see what's happening over there, you might leave the eggs, and the eggs will form part of pollution. Same if someone has a lemon tree that they don't really harvest or use, and the lemons are laying on the floor. As much as those are organic materials, those are still pollution. They're just laying around where you could have took it and passed it over to someone else, where or you could have processed that and made it lemon juice and you could have had it in your fridge for days and days. So it's about living together, and that's how that coexistence is. But the first step that
Wow,
someone,
Mark, you've just given me something of how much am I polluting without even knowing that I'm polluting.
Sure.
Sure.
Definitely, and we don't, but it's about opening up and learning about these things, and just just going like I started in the beginning, just going back to coexisting and living together and living with nature rather than against it. But from a permaculture perspective, you can start by, and it's not even like permaculture. Everybody knows about starting compost heaps, compost, like keeping all your veggies that you cut up, keep it like, make a compost pit with it. Throw, what I would advise, don't throw onion, lemon, well, you can, depending on what kind of compost heap you want to go into, and I'd love to dive into that later just to explain what is beneficial for who and what you want to do. But it's all about recycling. Let's start over there. Let's start with recycling. Recycle your glass. Like, don't just throw your glass in the bin, because it could be detrimental to some kids playing in the bin falls, and kids get hurt, or animals, whatever it may be. There's like these recycling spaces. Collect all your glass, throw it over there. Same goes with plastic. If you can't reuse it, get some sort of, I know there's
Mark,
these guys in Joburg that do
let's go back to the compost. I think that's super interesting for me.
Okay,
You
cool.
just blew my brain.
Cool.
In terms of compost. I mean, in my office we have a compost heap, and I know in the beginning
Okay.
it was quite a difficult thing, and I think we made it more difficult than what it needed to be. Maybe just give people the basics. How do we get a compost heap going? And I think a lot of people have some preconceived ideas that it's going to be stinky, and it's going to be difficult or hard work. Work through that, and then, as you said, that there's different types of compost heaps. So how do we direct that?
Okay, so the first step with compost holistically is all organic matter never leaves your property. So whenever you have a guy cutting your grass, or a tree fella that we have here in Johannesburg, don't let anything leave your property. Don't let the water that comes in with the rain leave your property. So that is the most important thing. So all the veg that you buy from a store, harvest the seeds. A lot of the times we go to the store and we buy like grapes and they're seedless, or we buy naartjies or they're seedless, and we celebrate and we're like, oh great, it's seedless. But that's actually a disservice, because now you can't even harvest those seeds and actually start a seed bank. So before even going to compost, start a seed bank, because from the seed bank, you are then able to plant when the compost is ready. So diving into the compost, you take everything that you have as scraps, potatoes, onion, onion peels, I wouldn't really say food, but sometimes you could, add some scrap food that you have, and you can, dependent on the space that you have, you could use like an old paint drum, you could use a bucket, you could dig a hole into the ground, and you literally use that as a compost pit, where you're throwing all your food scraps as well as all your garden waste in there. And that could be a way that you can actually grow your compost. If you have access to manure, that is also very rich in nitrogen. You can get your manure and you can throw boxes in there, because the manure with nitrogen helps the box and all cardboard stuff decompose so faster. So it's all what you have access to. Another great way. You want to ask a question?
Yeah, quickly. Someone's just asked a question. Can you throw in paper and or cardboard?
Definitely. I can see Barry said he just answered it. So whenever you have manure, it will be very good. And going into another different way, a way that I really love and I definitely recommend to everyone, is it's called Vermiculture, and that is the growing of what we call a worm farm. So it's red regulars, little earthworms. If you have kids, like it's a great thing to do. The kids can have a good time playing with the worms. Hopefully they don't eat them. So what the worms do, they're amazing stuff. They create what they call worm casting. So you throw all your food scraps in there except citrus, That's why I said no lemon, no lemon and no onion earlier. No lemon, no onion, no food things. So some people actually throw food, but sometimes your actual the worms might just die because it's like because of the different stuff that's in the food. But nonetheless, the worms create a very good worm cast that is nutrient rich and nitrogen rich that you can throw over your plants when you want them to grow, and you can add with your normal soil to make your soil rich.
Where do we get these worms from? I want to get some worms.
You want to get worms? Sometimes you could dig on your own land. I think you have, I'm sure you got worms in your land, in your garden, because you've got very good soil. There are a lot of places that are selling worms, but I'll bring you some. I got some for you. I'll bring you some.
Thank you, boss.
I'm not sure. There are people that are selling worms. As soon as I have some more intel, I'll share it. We can share it with the network just so people can get worms. So another thing is that the worms create a worm tea. This is powerful stuff. In fact, the guys that are in the market that sell these things. So with the worm tea, you mix it. Let's say you have a liter, let's say 500 mils of worm tea mixed with about 10 liters of water can like wet your whole garden and make your garden nutrient rich. Or you could take the worm castings and put it in like an old pillowcase and make like a tea bag, right? And this way will go further depending on the size of land that you have. But really putting in the worm castings will really transform your garden, transform how your crops are growing.
I got to say, Mark, I mean, perhaps because I've got a Jewish nose, I hate buying lawn dressing. And I just seem to have to buy lawn dressing all the time. And, so what you're saying to me, having something like that, I mean, it seems so small that can create such a massive, way of fertilizing your whole garden.
Exactly. And if you're talking about fertilizers, so this is like an organic fertilizer as well as a way of dealing with waste. But now when we go to fertilizers, you look at what you have like in your land already. So that's why it's very important to observe. Like you would find things like lab, you'd find things like dandelion. So it's very important to understand the plants that you have. Maybe get a plant book or get like one of those plant identifying apps, because things like comfrey, dandelion, lab, these are our nitrogen fixers, amazing nutrients and fertilizers. So what you can do with it is put it in a bucket and throw water in there, leave it for some time. It will have a smell, and that smell is good. We need to get used to, we need to unlearn, because there's a lot of unlearning, especially from a garden perspective. A lot of people like these neat gardens, and I know a lot of these Joburg gardeners make the garden very neat and beautiful. And what you really want is to mimic a forest. Whenever you walk in the forest, you see like the trees are full of this fungi, the green fungi, or sometimes it's like a little lighter. And that is just based on the fact that land is untouched. That land is growing naturally. It's growing the way that it's supposed to, feeding from other canopy plants, nitrogen fixers, and so forth. So in your garden as well, your food should be growing like that, should be growing wildly and freely, not being trimmed. Well, you can trim it. I'm not going to be against trimming, but it's just, you need to allow nature to do what it's there to do.
I know there was certainly something that I originally had a conversation with my gentleman that takes care of my garden, is to make it neat and tidy and all of those things. And then someone came along and said, no, you're actually taking away half the benefit for the garden. Two things that you mentioned now, which I think is important. Number one, harvesting seeds. And I think we should get into how people can create their own veggie gardens. But before we do that, you kind of chatted about sort of fertilizers. I know in terms of looking after a property, there's lots of sort of weeds that you need to kill, or insects that you need to kill, and that kind of stuff. And I've always been against that, because obviously you get chemicals that you can spray over your paving, and that takes away the weeds. But number one, where does that chemical go? And number two, I just don't really feel like I'm actually doing Mother Nature any good. Can you dive into that first before we talk about veggie gardens?
Okay, so I'll talk about the one that you mentioned, with just with regards to seeds. So seeds, that's very important. Looking at the big agri industry, um, a lot of the seeds from Monsanto are made to last like just for one growing for one cycle. And you will find that it will grow and you'll harvest, and after you harvest, there's nothing else. It doesn't grow anymore. It's just this dead piece of stem or whatever it may be. And that is how you can also identify a very bad seed, a very bad batch of seeds, whatever you want to call it, because initially seeds supposed to constantly produce. They go in a cycle of producing food, and then thereafter they produce seeds. Therefore, you harvest those seeds so that you're able to create a seed bank or transplant somewhere else. And then afterwards, this plant that produced seed for you will then again produce food in another cycle. So one way that we could also get seeds that are like cost effectively is buying food with seeds, keeping those seeds, planting those seeds, harvesting more seeds from those seeds, understanding when the plant is going to seed, and harvesting those seeds from the plant and creating a seed bank. Label it so that you know exactly what it is. And then you start monitoring the one that you have in your land
But
to
I'm
see when
sure,
it
I'm
grows.
sure, Mark, it's a little bit more complex than just taking the seeds out of my nachi and then throwing it in the ground. It's a little bit more complex than that.
No, not actually. You just take the nachi out of you take the seed from your nachi, put it in a bag, keep it there for a while. And as soon as, and you know how it would work well for you, put it in your worm farm and just let it be. The worms will do all the work, and next thing you'll know, there'll be a sprouting there of a little citrus plant, and you
I
can
am
even take it
so
out of
in
there,
now. I am
transplant
so in now. I want my worms and I want to get some seeds happening, bud.
it. Definitely. So one thing that we always struggled to plant was like an avo tree until we had a worm farm. Put the avo, like the pip, into the worm farm. Next thing, we had like 3 of these avo trees coming up, and we transplant them, and that's how we really got like an avo tree going, and so
Wow.
yeah, like another way is a lot of the permaculture community speak of heirloom seeds. Heirloom seeds are basically seeds that haven't been contaminated. There's like seeds that regenerate, seeds that create more food, like I was telling you about, like how it was in the olden days. And these are very good to get, but sometimes they may be expensive, but it's worth your while because you're buying it once off, and it will give you more seed throughout all the seasons, and you can harvest from that, and you make sure that you have a good batch of seeds that you could even start selling at a later stage or sharing with people at seed swaps or whatever it may be.
I remember swapping cards at school, so we're now going to be swapping seeds.
Definitely, and that's also something that we should look at. Seed swaps are very good because certain things that grow at other people's land that we don't have, or people are interested in growing something that you don't have. And when you go to a seed swap, you really learn a lot about different species, different seeds, and all that different stuff. I actually got my business, the key for that I got. Actually, I got it from a seed swap. So these
Wow.
seed swapping events are very good networking sessions and
Well,
and
I got to tell you
education.
that I love my patients, because my patients come into my garden, they see what I have and what I don't have, and then we do swapsies in
Mhm.
terms of the plants, and I just think that's so great. If we can move direction slightly, one lady's actually just asked the question: where do we source heirloom seeds from, please?
Um, with heirloom seeds, like I said, I'll get the information and I'll share it onto the network.
Perfect,
There's
perfect,
also
perfect.
a site. Yeah, there's also a site called Plant Forum. They also got like good seeds. They got
Cool.
good
So
seedlings. They got seedlings.
in terms of a veggie garden, what how much space does someone need in order to create a functional veggie garden that is creating healthy food, that supports the family? And then, as I asked, in terms of insecticides and pesticides and those kind of things, if you don't mind chatting about that.
Not at all. But I didn't answer your question about the fertilizers. So in
Yes.
that, I'll mention a little bit about that as well. So like as a first topic we mentioned about observing and interacting with your land, it doesn't really mean it's a farm. It doesn't mean it's like a big space. It could literally be a one by a cubic meter. It could literally be your porch. It could be outside your house. Like I have like a little garden here with these polystyrene and wooden structures that are like little how can I say, boxes that I planted. And it's just as much as you want and what do you find as important, like in your family. So it depends if your family loves. So I feel like if you're thinking about a permaculture, or not, let's say if you're thinking about a vegetable garden, think about the things that you generally go get from a store on a daily basis. So if you're a person that get a lot of tomatoes, potatoes, onion, start planting that. Prioritize those things so that you're saving money and you don't have to go buy a bag of potatoes. Your garden is creating that for you. Your garden is creating the tomatoes for you. Your garden is creating, plant the things that you like so that you don't have to go out there and buy them. And one of the important things I would add is that plant in community. Plant, like, get your next door neighbor planting. If you have someone at a bigger yard than you, get them planting the things that you can't plant, so you guys can start sharing.
Well, I'm just going to put this out there. I'm quite happy to have a communal veggie garden at my practice. I'm quite happy for everybody to be involved. We can harvest together. I think that would be such a great idea for my community. And again, for me, that's the social well-being of people coming together and doing things together, in getting their hands dirty. So I think that's such a great idea. Let's move to the fertilizers and pesticides and insecticides. Tell us about that. How do we do that in the healthiest possible way?
Cool. So when it goes to, so thank you so much for opening up your space for everyone to have a community garden. I'd love to be part of that and assist. When it comes to fertilizers, it's about using, like I said, comfrey, using those stuff that you mentioned are weeds. The biggest weed in your garden is your grass. Get rid of the grass, you got rid of the weeds. Okay, because your ground creates its own cover. And that ground cover is imperative to create microorganisms that take care of the soil, that gives nutrients to the soil. So talking about fertilizers, you can take comfrey, you can take a dandelion that really grows like a weed, what we perceive as a weed. You put that in water and you leave it for a couple of days, it will start bubbling, it will start creating this smell and stuff. And that is a natural, great fertilizer that will give your plants great food. Same like the tea that comes from the worms, 100% great fertilizer, as well as manure. If you can get hold of manure, that is also a very powerful and good fertilizer to use, and that's all natural stuff, and they go back into your land.
Shame, I'm hearing your kid screaming in the background. Is he okay, Mark?
Yeah, no, he's cool. You want to come here and be part of this session? So he's definitely a future speaker.
Nice. And in terms of insecticides and pesticides, how do we take care of those things?
So with regards to pesticides and stuff like that, it's what I would advise is companion planting. Okay, companion planting. There's actually a companion chart that we got from our trainer Andrew Mugford, and I would love to share it as well with the community. But at the end of the segment, I will share some stuff that can also assist people with understanding more or less how to do this on their own. But when it comes to pesticides, companion planting is a very good way to start. Companion planting is planting plants that are beneficial for each other. And when it comes to pesticides, there's certain pests that don't do well with like different colors. So if you're planting a marigold next to a rose, next to a comfrey, that will definitely deter pests, because they're so confused. There's so many colors going on here. So they're like, hey, I don't want to come here because I don't know what's going on here. So let me stay away from these. So that is the first natural way that you can just get rid of pests, by companion planting. A very powerful thing, because it also assists your plants grow, because the plants harvest from each other, the nutrients from each other. Another way is using organic pesticides. One of them that I use the most is Neem Oil. And Neem is very powerful. Neem you could use on yourself as well as in the garden. So that just shows how good it is, how healthy it is. So it's not like whenever you ingesting it, it's not like detrimental to your health. So, but it's obviously very important to wash the veggies before you have them, obviously because of like you might have spiders on it or aphids or whatever it may be. So, but like neem has always been like the one where I have like a lot of aphids and a lot of stuff that I really can't deal with through companion planting. Then I would turn to neem oil. It could be expensive, but it really does work to deter without killing. There is also, you could make your own mix, which is chili, garlic, um, what else is it? Chili, garlic, vinegar, I think. So you make a solution like this and you spray it all over your leaves, underneath your leaves, drench your plant, and the pesticides will also be deterred. Our idea is not to kill them because all the insects are very good in the ecosystem. So we need them as well. But there's certain insects that are like very, very bad as well. They can really destroy what you have. You know,
Yeah,
and
I
I
mean,
think
I've certainly seen that with my veggie garden. Mark, just to give you a time check, we've got 6.5 minutes left. It's amazing how quickly time goes. Yeah.
Really, that's so short.
In terms of planting, in the garden, and whether it's just plants to make the garden look beautiful, or to trap rain, or whatever, or even in your veggie garden, just have a quick moment to chat about the benefits of having things that work through all seasons and being respectful of the seasons. I know in South Africa, or particularly in the Western culture, we're very, what's the word? Short-term hedonism. I want this and I want this now. How dangerous that is, to have just that mindset rather than following the seasons.
Definitely. And I believe that the permaculture journey taught me a lot of patience, and just planting teaches you a lot of patience. Because you put something under the ground and you wait and you start getting impatient, like you're saying, and it's very important to have that sense of patience and to do the legwork in the beginning, like having the worm farms, having good soil. Like just before I go into your question, a lot of people have like tree fellers coming over to their house and cutting down their land. So especially now, from a Joburg perspective, it's very important to create like how can I say nutritional banks. So what you could do is dig a hole like 1 meter deep, put in all your sticks and all the heavy stuff at the bottom, starting putting cardboard, putting all your dry grass and stuff like that. So it's going all the way to the top, and you can level it out with soil. Leave that until the next season comes. And by the time the next season is, you can use that to plant all plants that are heavy eaters, like bananas, any trees. You can put your trees in there because trees need a lot of nutrients. So that is basically like a nutrient bank for plants. So you can even create this to be something like a long strip where you 1 meter deep, and then that section will be where you plant all the heavy eating plants. So like your trees, and like I said, banana circles and stuff like that. So
wow, Mark,
yes.
you've just given such value. Listen, we've got 4 minutes left. I think it's important that we get to my final 2 questions. And first question is, what would you like the future of healthcare to look like? And number 2 question is, how do we move in that direction? Number 1 question, what would you like the future of healthcare to look like? And number 2, how do we move in that direction? Before you answer, Mark, I just want to tell you, this was such a pleasure. I can imagine that everyone on this call is going, wow, there's so much that they've learned. I want to thank everyone on the call for joining us. I have just sent them a message that if they want to get those 2 ebooks, they can contact you directly. And I've given your mobile number. Yeah. So what would you like the future of healthcare to look like, Mark? And how do we move in that direction?
Cool. And I think you do know the answer to that, Dr. Travis. But like the future of healthcare to me, it's moving away from like big pharma, moving away from allopathic medication, understanding that our bodies can heal itself, and like going beyond the mind. Like when I think about that, I think about like one of my trainers, Uncle Tony Clausen. He taught me that sometimes the mind is stronger than the body, and sometimes the body is stronger than the mind. So it's always about going beyond that, you know, and we are people of the soul. So using the soul to really like connect to our higher selves and our higher beings. And when I look at the future of of health, we should be diving into those type of topics. We should be looking at the psyche, looking at the physical, looking at the emotional, not just handing over pills over a counter and say, come back again if you feel a certain way, or whatever it is. Eating good food, eating healthy, going back to where we were. Like walking in a museum, you'd see all these like armors that knights used to wear, and those were human beings just like us, and they used to wear this heavy armor, and I don't think we could even be able to run in an armor like that or even put it on. So that should say like how weak we've become as a species. So yeah, we should go back into that spaces and you know, and learning a lot. And I must admit, like if anyone on this call has never had food from their garden, I challenge them to do that. And if you haven't been to a chiropractor before, I definitely encourage you to go do that visit. It will be worth your while, because I mean, I went to go visit Dr. J, and I learned so much about myself,
Well,
about
I
my body.
appreciate that.
You know?
I appreciate that little pump there, Mark. That's appreciated. In terms of permaculture, I mean, I think for me is if we could get more and more people thinking on this concept of permaculture, you know, that would then allow us to be able to, you know, create the food sources that would be part of someone's healing capabilities.
Definitely. And permaculture allows for that from a perspective where you're eating food that is nutrient rich, because a lot of the foods that we're having now, it's not that nutrient, it's nutrient deficient. And people would say, I'm buying stuff from Pick and Pay, from Woolies, and I'm eating healthy because they perceive their salad as a healthy meal. And that's the problem. It's contaminated, it's been compromised. So it's about creating communities where we're sharing good food and sharing knowledge about good food and like indigenous knowledge about food, because there's a lot of other like veggies that we could, like madumbi, and different cultures actually have different methodologies of eating, and different veggies that could be beneficial to you, like, and herbs. So we need to do more research and go deeper and like seek the knowledge.
Well, I'm going to say that for me, that makes a lot of sense, because there's things that you know about that I have absolutely no clue about. And I think if we, you know, bring that knowledge together, you know, in terms of different vegetables and how to cook it and how to work with it, you know, we're really building that social network. Mark, we've got less than a minute